Hello, Dr. Amir. This is my reflection video on my group's teaching presentation, and our topic was on how to achieve optimal posture. So the group members were myself, Jenny, Moise, as well as Mena. And first of all, let's just summarize the roles of each group member. So Moise began by introducing the topic, and he also explained some of the exercises we could do to help us achieve this posture. My role was to explain the concept of creep, and the reason why I wanted to do that earlier on was just to kind of give everybody an idea of what's happening when they're sitting in an improper posture. And it also kind of sets in their head this idea that if they sit in a bad posture for a while, this can happen to them. So it's almost like a fear tactic in a way, but also an educational tool that'll help them just understand what's going on. After that, Jenny explained how to sit in optimal posture. So basically, it was more of a general how you can adjust your posture while you're sitting down. After that, we explained the exercises such as scapular retraction, neck flexion, things like that, to basically maintain these fixes that we taught our people that we taught to. And then Mena's role was really more of an in-depth way of how to achieve optimal posture. So this was kind of a bottom-up approach by, finding your sits bones, and then from there adjusting the hip, moving all the way up to the shoulders, and then to the neck. So this pretty much summed everything up and kind of gave everybody more of a verbal slash motor cue of how to achieve this posture. It was kind of a different approach to how we did it before. She also included a video of her explaining it, but then after that there's also a slide that included text for people who would rather read it and thought it would help them that way. Alright, so the next part of the reflection was the review process, the peer review process that we underwent in class. So first I'll just explain how it was like peer reviewing everybody else, because that is what happened first in class. So it kind of made me more aware of what my group needed to do actually as well, because I was looking for things that I wasn't necessarily noticing when I was making my own presentation. So when I noticed the pros and cons of the group that I was peer reviewing, namely the group that spoke about how to lift properly for firefighters, it helped me realize things that we needed to work on and things that we also did well as a group. So I think this just really helped me use some of my more critical thinking skills. If I was more of a spectator, just like watching a presentation, I wouldn't really be thinking about these things. So the fact that I had to actively think while I was peer reviewing my peers, it just made it that much better for not only the group that I was peer reviewing and my group members were peer reviewing, but for us as well. It helped us with our presentation. Now, to talk more about when we were getting reviewed by my classmates as well as yourself, I think it helped tremendously, especially the comments about taking out certain things. It did make the presentation a bit longer and more in depth than it needed to be, namely the whole section on standing posture. Because we were geared more towards office workers, it does make sense to just stick with sitting posture. Standing posture could be another topic we could talk about, but I think that keeping it more simple really helps the office workers that we were presenting to remember what we were talking about, because standing posture is kind of a whole nother animal. So I think it was better to keep it simple. Another thing was our own questionnaire. We had 10 questions, and it was a bit much. We thought that it would help us see if the people we were presenting to actually understood the material, but I think at the end of the day, it just made it a whole lot more confusing in a way. More so just because it was so much information, and you don't really expect people to understand some of the questions we were asking them unless they probably heard the presentation 2 or 3 times. So I think narrowing it down to 5 questions that really focused on the main concepts we were trying to address did a much better job at helping us tell if we were able to teach the information effectively. Alright, so regarding the learning style I have, I'm more of a visual learner more than anything else. And I think that is showed with the way I was teaching my material, namely the concept of creep. So I try to explain creep as being kind of like pulling Laffy Taffy, and I also have the picture of somebody like physically pulling it, just to kind of get a better picture of what was actually going on over time. I also had the picture of like the tree branch with like a weight attached to the end of it and that pulling down over time. And there was also a sequence of somebody sitting in bad posture, and then over the day they would hunch over more and more. So I think that these pictures can really, help with people remembering why poor posture is bad throughout the day. And by having a mental image, it kind of just hammers in that concept of creep and why it can be so detrimental over time. And this wasn't only actually in just this presentation. I'm more of a visual presenter, so to speak. In most of my presentations, I try not to add too much text in my slides, just because I know, just as a student myself, if I'm trying to learn something kind of in the moment, pictures help me more than words. If I'm studying afterwards, for sure words will help me more. But if I'm just kind of trying to grasp the concept for the first time, having a visual aid really helps me out a lot. So that's kind of what I wanted to do when I was presenting. Okay. All right, so for the teaching styles we used, everybody kind of incorporated their own way of teaching. So we had a combination of videos that we played for the subjects. We also had a lot of pictures. We also had text, so that no matter what anyone's learning style was, we could pretty much have it suited to them. So after we went through our presentation, which included again the videos, the pictures, the text, we demonstrated. We had a live demo at the end to just basically teach everybody how to achieve that optimal posture. So kind of like what Jenny and Mena taught everyone how to do, as well as Mo. It was how to adjust posture while sitting. So everybody was sitting down, then we kind of had them adjusted there. Then achieving the optimal posture, that sort of bottom-up approach that Mena taught, we had everybody do that with one another. And then Mo also showed everybody how to do the exercises and how to do it, like in the office. So at the end, we also had somebody demonstrate poor posture for my group, and then they had to pretty much correct it. So this was a pretty effective way of determining whether the office workers were able to remember the material that we taught them or not. And after the feedback they gave us, they did say that they enjoyed the presentation and they thought it was super relevant to their line of work. But they also liked that live demonstration at the end, because it's a lot different from when you're hearing somebody say something to you, do this exercise or sit this way, versus actually doing it and seeing if you can correct your own posture. So we thought that was super helpful for them, and they also just really appreciated the fact that they were able to correct it. And we also explained to them that this isn't something that's gonna come overnight. We really wanted to reinforce that idea, because sometimes people could be discouraged by not having their posture corrected immediately. And we said that this is a process. Luckily, all the office workers that we presented to, we're all avid gym goers, so they understood the concept of, gains don't happen immediately, strength gains and endurance gains, that this is something that takes a few weeks, but all the issues that happen as a result of creep and just bad posture in general, it is reversible. So we also wanted to make sure that they had that idea so that they could be more optimistic about the results of what we taught them. So another tool that we had to determine whether everyone learned the material was through our questionnaire, and they were, fairly straightforward questions, but that wasn't really the point. It was more, can they grasp the concepts of, just the most important parts of our presentation, things that if they understood, they would understand the reason why having good posture is so important, and also the reasons behind poor posture in general. So they also had a lot of questions at the end, regarding a bunch of topics, some of them being like even the standing posture, which we originally took out. And we had like a short little discussion about that. We also discussed just in general, how often they needed to perform the exercises, things like that. They wanted to clarify some points. But the fact that they did have questions shows that they were engaged in the presentation, and we were excited about that. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't just some kind of presentation that just droned on and didn't give any valuable information. We wanted to make sure it was relatable to them, so that they could pay attention, and that this is something that they could incorporate into their lives moving forward. Okay, so having said that, something that I would change from the presentation would probably be our slides on having good sitting posture versus how to achieve optimal posture. So these concepts, even though they're not exactly the same, to somebody who's listening to the presentation, it might be a bit difficult to tell the difference because in one slide we're explaining how to adjust yourself in your seat to have good sitting posture, and then in the other one we're explaining how to find your optimal posture. So someone might really not understand what the difference between those two concepts are. So it might be a little bit better to just teach one of them, keep it as simple as possible, but not any simpler. So I think that perhaps just teaching the office workers how to achieve their optimal posture while they're sitting down in a chair should suffice, and it should get the point across. So as long as we teach them, one way, but as long as it's the correct way of having that optimal posture, then I think we've done our job. Alright, so for the last part of this reflection, I'm just going to discuss how I would change the presentation if we were speaking to a different population. So if we spoke to middle schoolers, for example, I would probably change, the beginning part of the presentation and kind of, have that fear tactic. So what I would probably do is explain to them, if they sit in this poor posture in their classroom over time, how kyphotic their posture would be. And I wouldn't use like the word kyphotic or anything. I would just explain that they would be hunched over, that it would be difficult to, kind of reverse this, and just essentially really hammer in the point that it's important to have this good posture while they're young, because it's going to pay dividends in the future. So, and it will prevent a lot of issues in the future as well. So another group that we could present to would be healthcare professionals, and in particular it could be physical therapists. So physical therapy is a very physical profession, as the name implies, and it's one in which you're going to have the adequate strength, adequate endurance to actually even carry out your job. Whether it's doing manipulations or any kind of manual therapy, it's going to be really important that you have good posture, because that's only going to prolong your career. If you have poor posture, it's going to wear and tear over time, and it can potentially shorten a physical therapist's career. So it's kind of another fear tactic we could use. It's just, different populations, but essentially it's a similar fear tactic. For the younger generation, it would be do this to prevent issues in the future. And for physical therapists, it could be do this, or, your career could be potentially cut short. All right, Dr. Amir, that was my reflection on my group's presentation. Thanks again for a great semester, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon in our next class.